for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
And I'm Katy Steele for Jack Prince.
And Jack wanted me to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. I talked to him on the phone for a little bit this morning on the way down here in this awful weather that we're starting to get around the Grand Rapids area. It was fine up by my house, and then as soon as I got into Comstock Park, it turned awful.
Some people would say it turned beautiful.
Oh, they can take their beauty and stick it. Oh, I hate weather. I hate snow.
I just hate that everybody forgets how to drive, and every single time there is, the first snowfall, you're just watching people slide off the road.
Yeah, you just said you just had a thing on your phone that a few minutes ago. There's 15 cars waiting to be picked up that are damaged at an intersection that I just drove past about an hour ago.
Yeah. It's like, how did you 15 not manage to get through?
Yeah, no kidding. Well, we've got a lot to talk about today, and we've got a Hammer Time segment. We're going to start off the show with that. But before we get going with that, some reminders. You can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. And you can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com or at Stitcher.com. Just do a search for Southpaws there. You can find us on Apple Podcasts by doing a search for Southpaws. And once you've found our logo, you've found us. Links to our weekly episodes are published automatically to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube pages. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI-FM in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and WOOL, Black Sheep Radio, Bellows Falls, Vermont. So make sure you listen to us there as well. All right, we might as well not delay things any further. Let's go ahead and get the music out of the way.
Stop! Hammer time!
Oh, yeah, it's hammer time. It's time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week. We might as well go out with a bang in 2020. Our winner this week, Donald Trump.
Could there be another winner? I mean, pretty much every week this year we've had to set him aside so that we can award a different douchebag because he was always the de facto winner.
He pretty much was. Yeah, and why are we going after Trump this time? Well, it's because of his pardons. This all started Tuesday. We might as well get right into it here. This is Maggie Haberman and Michael S. Schmidt writing for the New York Times. This is dated December 22nd. In an audacious pre-Christmas round of pardons, Donald Trump granted clemency Tuesday to two people who pleaded guilty in the special counsel's Russia inquiry, 4 Blackwater guards convicted in connection with the killing of Iraqi civilians, and 3 corrupt former Republican members of Congress. Yeah, Trump gets the douchebag award for the Blackwater pardons.
Yeah.
Not cool.
Darren, do you remember, and yes, I am old enough to remember the days back when it was shocking that they would pardon somebody who had blatantly committed financial crimes, right?
Oh, exactly.
We knew that they had blatantly committed these financial crimes, and it was just why? How could they have pardoned him? How could they let him off? How could they not hold him accountable? Okay, friends, that was quick because now we're to the point where they're just blatantly pardoning cold-blooded terrorist murderers, okay? Terrorist murderers. There's no other description for what these guys did.
No, there isn't. Not even close. It was a remarkable assertion of pardon power by a president who continues to dispute his loss in the election and might well be followed by other pardons in the weeks before he leaves office January 20th. Well, he didn't wait weeks. He waited one day to issue more pardons. We'll get to those in just a minute here. Trump nullified more of the legal consequences of an investigation into his 2016 campaign that he long labeled a hoax. You know, just like he did with the coronavirus. That was a hoax.
Yep.
He granted clemency to contractors whose actions in Iraq set off an international uproar and helped turn public opinion further against the war there. And he pardoned 3 members of his party who had become high-profile examples of public corruption. The 15 pardons and 5 commutations were made public by the White House in a statement Tuesday evening. They appeared in many cases to have bypassed the traditional Justice Department review process. More than half of the cases did not meet the department's standards for consideration and reflected Trump's long-held grudges about the Russia investigation, his instinct to side with members of the military accused of wrongdoing, and his willingness to reward political allies. So this is just Trump patting the back of all of his little buddies.
I mean, I wish it was that simple. I don't know that it's just him patting the back. I mean, he's patting their backs for sure, but I think there's an exchange here. I think there's a big exchange here, and it's going to happen in the next couple of weeks when Trump's supposed to be leaving the damn White House, and he's going to need some people to help him stay, right?
He's going to try.
Well, I mean, think about this, though. You can say he's going to try, but we already know that Blackwater is the largest private military on the earth, right? Okay, so if he's doing them favors, so he's got Blackwater on his team, he's got whatever factions of the U.S. military that he still has power over that will listen to him. And now he's doing favors for Russians and Ukrainians. So how do we know that they're not going to come over and bring their military and help him keep office? How do we know he is not going to consolidate what he has of the United States military with the Russian military and completely pull... Would that be a coup, technically? Is that the phrase?
I think that would be.
Okay, that would be a coup, because that's what I see happening right now. If you pay attention to what's going on, one of the people you just mentioned who got pardoned, Alex van der Zwaan, he was the Dutch attorney.
Yeah.
He was deported to the Netherlands. Do you know who he's married to?
Who?
Ava Khan. Her father is German Khan. Huge BP oil tycoon. Just did a deal with Britain. Okay.
So it's the rich pardoning the rich.
This is the largest, and not just the rich. These are the most powerful. Keep in mind, this is one of the biggest. Let me read it from his Wikipedia. He was deputy chairman of TNK Oil Company from 1997 until 2003. In 2003, Khan worked with the other TNK owners to form a 50-50 joint venture with BP in what was the largest foreign investment in Russia to date, US $8 billion.
Lovely.
I mean, that right there, that is one of Russia's biggest oligarchs, and he just bought a favor from him. So we have a lot of things to be concerned about. Look around, friends, see what's happening, because I'm thinking they're building prisons.
Let me go ahead and continue this story here. I'm going to skip around a little bit. One of the most notable pardons went to George Papadopoulos, who was a foreign policy advisor to Trump's 2016 campaign and who pleaded guilty in 2017 to making false statements to federal officials as part of the investigation by special counsel Robert Mueller. Alex van der Zwaan, a lawyer who pleaded guilty to the same charge in 2018 in connection with the special counsel's inquiry, was also pardoned. Both he and Mr. Papadopoulos served short prison sentences. The Mueller-related pardons are a signal of more to come for people caught up in the investigation. That is according to people close to Trump. Trump has already pardoned his first national security advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who pleaded guilty twice to charges including lying to the FBI in connection with the Russia inquiry. In July, Trump commuted the sentence of Roger Stone, his longtime advisor, who was convicted on a series of charges related to the investigation, and Wednesday he pardoned Stone. So we'll get into this here. Trump's list of pardons Tuesday included 4 former U.S. service members who were convicted on charges related to the killing of Iraqi civilians while working as contractors for Blackwater in 2007. One of them, Nicholas Slatton, had been sentenced to life in prison after the Justice Department had gone to great lengths to prosecute him. Slatton had been a contractor for Blackwater and was sentenced for his role in the killing of 17 Iraqi civilians in Nisr Square in Baghdad, a massacre that left one of the most lasting stains of the war on the United States. They killed women and children. Among the dead were an 8-year-old boy and an 11-year-old boy. This is disgusting.
This is glaringly obvious what's happening here. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't know how many of you have researched Erik Prince or read any of the books about him, but if you have, you know the size of his ego.
Mm-hmm. And the size of his bank account.
Oh, yeah, they're very comparable.
Yeah.
And you also understand how upset he is about Blackwater being exposed in the Iraq War. Mm-hmm. How personally pissed off he is about it. And how the only person who would have worked to fight to get those 4 people pardoned would be Erik Prince. That was a personal favor from Donald Trump to Erik Prince. It's got nothing to do with anything else.
And let me just add that Erik Prince's sister is the current Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos.
DeVos, also a family from the Netherlands, much like Mr. van der Zwaan, who was just pardoned. There are a lot of things connected here that people need to pay attention to, like the Russian bank being connected to Spectrum Health Hospital back in 2016, which Betsy DeVos sits on the board of. Her family owns the entire healthcare system here. So that's another obvious connection to his campaign.
Absolutely, it is. Continuing here, the 3 former members of Congress pardoned by Trump were Chris Collins of New York, Stephen Stockman of Texas, and Jack's favorite, Duncan Hunter of California.
Yeah, he's a real star, isn't he?
Hunter was set to begin serving an 11-month sentence next month. He pleaded guilty in 2019 to one charge of misusing campaign funds. Yeah, we've talked about this guy on the show.
He blamed his wife, right?
and I believe we gave him douchebag of the week for that. This is the guy that was using campaign funds for trips for dentist appointments.
For everything, yeah.
Yeah. It was their personal slush fund.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't they remodel their house and use campaign funds?
Yep, and they bought like $13,000 desks, and like it was like insane amounts of money that they were spending on stuff.
Mm-hmm. Collins, an early supporter of Trump, had been serving a 26-month sentence after pleading guilty in 2019 to charges of making false statements to the FBI and to conspiring to commit securities fraud. Lovely. Stockman was convicted in 2018 on charges of fraud and money laundering. He had been serving a 10-year sentence. Sidney Powell, the lawyer and election conspiracy theorist whom Trump considered making a White House special counsel to investigate election fraud, argued that he was a candidate for a pardon. Trump also granted full pardons to 2 former Border Patrol agents whose sentences for their roles in the shooting of an alleged drug trafficker had previously been commuted by George W. Bush. So he just wiped those 2 right out. Oh no, you don't have to serve any more time.
No, I couldn't believe that one of the reasons that the attorneys gave for these people supposedly being eligible for pardons is that they should have had civil trials because, they should have been in civil court to begin with. Like it can't be criminal to commit a financial crime is basically what they were saying. It's such a joke.
As of the writing of this article, they talked to Harvard law professor Jack Goldsmith. He is a professor at Harvard Law School. He found that of Trump's 45 pardons or commutations before Tuesday, 88% went to people with personal ties to Trump or to people who furthered his political aims. So you better watch out, folks. Wake up.
I want to know how the percentage of people that were actually Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's pardoning people from a lot of other powerful countries.
Exactly.
That committed crimes against America.
Goldsmith said Tuesday that the pardons, quote, continue Trump's unprecedented pattern of issuing self-serving pardons and commutations that advance his personal interests, reward friends, seek retribution against enemies, or gratify political constituencies. Like his past pardons, most, if not all of them, appear to be based on insider recommendations rather than normal Justice Department vetting processes. End of quote.
I would disagree with their last sentence because from what I'm seeing, it seems to be based on whatever their plan is to help him maintain power. That's what it comes down to. He's got a plan. He's not going to relinquish the seat. He's not going to relinquish the White House. And I think we all need to be concerned about the technology that I'm seeing them install everywhere, because it could easily be used against us.
And as we mentioned, the pardons of the Blackwater contractors have direct links to two of Trump's close allies, Eric Prince, the former head of Blackwater, and Prince's sister, Betsy DeVos, the education secretary. Eric Prince's own conduct was investigated by the special counsel's office. During the 2017 transition, Prince met with a Russian-sanctioned banker in the Seychelles to come up with ways the Russian government and the incoming Trump administration could cooperate.
Thank you. You see what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, Eric Prince has a plan, and he has been working on it for a decade now to connect the major powers of the country outside of America. He is helping install infrastructure all the way from Africa, across Europe, all the way to Russia, because that's the longest piece of physical geographic land basically in the world where you can do it, so it's going to be the most money. And when you realize that the Dutch lawyer they just pardoned, is married to a Russian BP oil tycoon, come on, guys, come on.
Yep. The 33-year-old Papadopoulos served 12 days in jail for lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russian intermediaries during the 2016 presidential race. He later published a book portraying himself as a victim of a deep state plot to bring down Trump.
Trump, the guy who was here in Grand Rapids, right outside Spectrum Health, the night before he was elected in 2016. Come on, guys.
Van der Zwaan was sentenced in April 2018 to 30 days in prison for lying to investigators for the special counsel's office about his contacts with a business associate said to be a Russian intelligence officer who worked closely with former campaign chair Paul Manafort. Manafort was convicted in 2018 on a range of charges, including tax and bank fraud. He was ordered to serve a combined 7 years in prison. This year, Manafort was granted home confinement amid fears of the coronavirus spreading in prisons. Once again, this goes back to the two-tier justice system. Privilege for the rich. Everybody else, you're out of luck.
Yep. It's a big club, and we're not in it.
Exactly. Oh, jeez. Two other figures convicted in the Russia investigation, Manafort's deputy Rick Gates and Trump's former personal lawyer Mike Cohen, are seen as unlikely candidates for a pardon from Trump because they've cooperated in the investigation. So they're going to be hung out to dry, thrown under the bus, whatever analogy you want to use.
Well, they've all been, trying to decide, these Republicans, for the last 6 months, which way is it going to go? What do I do? Because it's a 50-50 bet,
The case involving the Blackwater contractors was one of the low points in the Iraq War. The killing of the civilians in Nisour Square, which destroyed any remaining credibility the United States had with Iraqis. The case highlighted the outsized role that military contractors had taken on to help beleaguered American forces in Iraq, and led to a series of disclosures about how American contractors were acting like thuggish militias throughout the country.
Newsflash, American contractors are thug militias.
Yep. Prosecution proved to be an enormous headache for the Justice Department as investigators first needed to collect evidence at a crime scene on the other side of the world. In 2009, a federal judge dismissed the cases against 4 of the contractors, arguing that investigators had relied on tainted evidence. 2 years later, the Federal Appeals Court in Washington reversed that decision. Although the case was reopened, it still took many years to resolve it. In 2019, Slatton was sentenced to life in prison for what prosecutors alleged was his role in firing the first shot in Nisour Square that killed a civilian and led to contractors firing grenades and machine guns into the crowd. One commutation on the White House list stood out for the connections of the recipient. Philip S. Forms, who was sentenced last year to 20 years in prison for Medicaid fraud, had his commutation recommended by, among others, 2 former attorneys general, Edwin Meese and Michael Mukasey, the White House said. So, interesting stuff there.
When those guys, the 4 of them, were sentenced for what they did, the judge actually, I'll quote him, he said, "The crimes here were so horrendous, the massacre and maiming of innocents so heinous, that they outweigh any factors that the defendants may argue from a basis for leniency.
Wow. Yeah. So how does Trump this one? Pun slightly intended. Issued 26 more pardons Wednesday. I have this story. This is Pamela Brown, Paul LeBlanc, Caitlin Palance, and Kevin Liptak writing for CNN. Donald Trump Wednesday evening announced 26 new pardons, including for longtime ally Roger Stone, former campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and White House senior advisor Jared Kushner's father, Charles. The pardons extend Trump's streak of wielding his clemency powers for criminals who are loyalists, well-connected, or adjacent to his family. While all presidents issue controversial pardons at the end of their terms, Trump appears to be moving at a faster pace than his predecessors, demonstrating little inhibition at rewarding his friends and allies using one of the most unrestricted powers of his office. Well, maybe that needs to change.
Yeah.
The pardons of Manafort and Stone reward two of the most high-profile and widely condemned former advisors of Trump, both of whom were indicted by special counsel Robert Mueller, went to trial and were convicted by juries of multiple crimes. I'm going to skip down a little bit. Charles Kushner had been prosecuted by then U.S. Attorney for New Jersey Chris Christie in the early 2000s for tax evasion, witness tampering, and illegal campaign contributions. He pleaded guilty to 16 counts of tax evasion, 1 count of retaliating against a federal witness, his brother-in-law, and another count of lying to the Federal Election Commission. Oh, boy.
Oh, it just keeps getting better.
Christie in early 2019 went on to say that Charles Kushner committed, quote, one of the most loathsome, disgusting crimes, end of quote, he had prosecuted, referring to an elaborate revenge plot that the older Kushner hatched in 2003 in order to target his brother-in-law, William Scholder, a former employee turned witness for federal prosecutors in their case against Kushner. As a part of the plot, Kushner hired a prostitute to lure Scholder into having sex in a Bridgewater, New Jersey motel room as a hidden camera rolled. A tape of the encounter was then sent to Kushner's sister and Scholder's wife, Esther. Ultimately, the intimidation stunt failed. The Scholders brought the video to prosecutors who tracked down the woman and threatened her with arrest. She promptly turned on Kushner.
Trash.
Oh,
they're all trash.
Oh, you know who else he pardoned Wednesday? Well, he got Duncan Hunter on Tuesday. He got his wife Wednesday.
Really?
Margaret Hunter. Just one day after Trump granted her husband Duncan a full pardon, she got one too. She had pleaded guilty last year to conspiring knowingly and willingly to convert campaign funds for personal use. Oh, Jesus. Beyond the high-profile pardons, Trump also pardoned more than 20 other individuals, including those who had pleaded guilty to various cyber crimes, firearm possession, and mail fraud. He also commuted the sentences of 3 others.
I'm telling you, the more I read about this, the scarier it gets, because the people he's pardoning. Okay, Wednesday pardon. Mark, and please forgive me if I butcher this pronunciation, Mark Siljander, or Siljander. He is a previous Michigan congressman.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Hold on. I've got the list of the other ones. Let me see if I can find them here.
So he was charged with, it says charges related to...
Oh, here we go. I've got Mark Siljander. Trump granted a full pardon to him. It was supported by former U.S. Attorney General Edwin Meese, former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, Alabama Congressman Robert Adderholt, and Pastor Andrew Brunson. He served in the U.S. House for 6 years, representing Michigan's 4th District. During his time in Congress, he was one of their most stalwart defenders of pro-life principles and the namesake of the Siljander Amendment, which prohibits U.S. funds from being used to lobby for or against abortion.
So it really comes down to what he was arrested for, though.
Yeah.
Which was, they accused him of, I'm trying to find the technical charge so that I don't misstate it, but...
I got it here. He
Okay,
served a year in prison for obstruction of justice and failing to register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act.
Okay, and it's because he was doing work with an Islamic charity. And his reasoning is that he was attempting to bridge the divide in Muslim and Christian religions, right? Mm-hmm. But he was basically working for the Islamic charity.
And by the way, he's still doing this work to this day.
And my concern here, and the reason I brought this up, is just to connect the fact that Mr. van der Zwaan, his father-in-law, was also at one point donating to some Israeli charities. I just feel like there's a whole lot of people connecting and convalescing their power right now outside of the USA, and they're working really closely with Donald Trump. And we've only got a couple of weeks before that could all be unleashed on the American people. And it's our turn, guys. We've sat back and let it happen to every other country. I'm just saying, pay attention.
And right underneath him is the one you mentioned before we started recording, Stephanie Moore.
Oh.
Her clemency was supported by the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund and the Fraternal Order of Police.
Of course. You know why? And this one, I am convinced, is just about the media narrative.
Exactly.
Yep, because this woman, back in 1995, unleashed her police dog on a homeless man who had nothing to do with the investigation that she was running at the time.
Yep. She served 10 years in prison. She released her canine partner on a burglary suspect, resulting in a bite wound requiring 10 stitches. And by the way, he had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, he was just sleeping near the location when it got robbed.
Mm-hmm. Some others on the list, Gary Brugman. His clemency was supported by numerous elected officials. Let's see, he served the country for 8 years in the Coast Guard. He was then a Border Patrol agent for 4 years.
Oh, Trump's best friends.
Mm-hmm. He was accused of knocking one of the illegal immigrants to the ground and was prosecuted on that basis for deprivation of rights. He served 27 months in prison, where other inmates sought to harm him because of his law enforcement background. Oh, well, that's tough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Republicans, the violent conservatives will tell you if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Well, it works both ways there.
Exactly.
Oh, boy.
Well, it should work both ways, but we have two justice systems here.
Exactly. John Tate and Jesse Benton, they were both convicted on indirect campaign payments to a state senator. Oh, geez. Charles Kushner, Roger Stone, full pardon. Mark Shapiro and Irving Stitsky. They founded a real estate investing firm, but they hid their prior felony convictions and used a straw CEO. During the 2008 financial crisis, they lost millions of investors' dollars and got prosecuted for it. Lovely. There's just some real lovely people on this list here.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. If you're watching this and paying attention and reading who these people are and what they do, take the time to go look at what's happening in China right now with the Uyghur Muslims, because Russia is helping China imprison these people. They're totally on board with it.
Yeah.
They have set up a plan. Guess what company built their prisons? Blackwater.
I was going to say probably Academy.
What do you think is happening when you look around? If you look around, the building next door to my house, downtown Grand Rapids, is owned by a place called Terra Firma. Look up Terra Firma, because it's a kidnapping ransom company that specializes in getting back people who've been kidnapped for ransom.
Oh, jeez.
We need to start paying attention, because I'm telling you, we don't got much time.
Exactly. Well, let's go ahead and wrap the segment up. So Donald Trump, winner of Douchebag of the Week. He's the final one for 2020. We're not going to have one next week because technically we're going to record next Thursday, which will be December 31st, but that technically will be the January 1st, 2021 episode. So, and today's show is technically the Christmas episode, but we got to get the show out to the station.
Merry Christmas, though.
Yep. So, Donald Trump, we've got this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
Well, it's kind of hard for you to not be a douchebag. You've been one your entire miserable life. So were your parents.
It's all you know.
Yeah, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. In Trump's case, the dingleberry didn't fall too far from the asshole.
Truth. Still hanging on.
Unfortunately, and still stinking. Oh, geez. And we might as well get right into this. This is Nicholas Ryman writing for Forbes magazine. Folks, this ain't a liberal rag. This is Forbes. This is dated December 19th. Donald Trump reportedly inquired about an idea raised by Michael Flynn that the U.S. military be deployed to overturn the results of the election, a claim shot down by his advisors at a meeting where Trump appeared to embrace increasingly fringe notions about his election loss. New York Times White House correspondent Maggie Haberman reported Saturday of last week that Trump asked about Flynn's idea, as senior officials are reportedly becoming very unsettled by Trump's escalating interest in crackpot plans during his last days in power.
Oh, they're getting unsettled now? They're finally getting a little bit unsettled.
25th Amendment, folks. Where is it?
4 years ago. I keep getting memories in my Facebook articles talking about the end is near from 4 years ago, and he's still in office.
On Thursday, Flynn said that Trump could deploy the military to swing states that he lost to Joe Biden in order to rerun the election. During the meeting, Trump also floated naming conspiracy theorist attorney Sidney Powell as special counsel to investigate voter fraud. By the way, Powell has pushed a baseless theory that Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez rigged voting machines. Here's the problem with that. Hugo Chavez has been dead for a number of years. Cuckoo! Cuckoo! Axios reported Saturday that even some of Trump's long loyal top officials have been dismayed by his behavior, including his interest in Flynn's views, with one senior official saying that Trump, quote, spends his time talking to conspiracy nuts who openly say declaring martial law is no big deal, end of quote.
Those, you can call them conspiracy nuts, or you can call them the most powerful people in the world. But at least if you call them the most powerful people in the world, people don't blow them off as not relevant, because these people are relevant even if they're crazy.
Trump responded to the story from Forbes on Twitter by just tweeting this, quote, martial law equals fake news, just more knowingly bad reporting, end of quote. No, there's a lot of truth to it, I'm afraid.
But I don't think it's going to be martial law. Martial law would be him unleashing, like,
the military.
Well, yeah, but would it be the privately contracted military? Would that be considered martial law?
That's a possibility.
Because that's where we're at right now. And I don't think, I mean, you could call it a lot of different things. I mean, like fascism and dictatorship and all kinds of different things. But my point is that don't expect it to be, oh, he's going to call my Marine brother-in-law and my Marine brother-in-law is going to tell him no, so we're fine. No. He has control over the Department of Defense. He has the Customs and Border Patrol people. He has ICE officers, and those people are racist, and they're loyal to him, and they will do whatever he says.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. Flynn, in an appearance on Newsmax last week, Thursday, said, quote, within the swing states, if he wanted to, he could take the military capabilities and he could place them in those states and basically rerun an election in each of those states, end of quote. Yeah, by the way, Newsmax looking at possibly getting sued.
Really?
They've had to back off a lot of the conspiracy stuff because now there's threats of lawsuits against them for defamation. Fox has had to back off of some of this too. Next one up, One America News Network, which is basically Fox on steroids.
Right. Wow, that's a joke. But, I mean, at some point they're going to have to back off of it or they won't be able to rig their next election. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah. Unbelievable stuff here, folks. By the way, speaking of rigging the election, we might as well have some more election news here. This is some good stuff, though. This is Bridge Magazine writing December 22nd. I got to say it, Dana Nessel has been a previous guest on the show when she was a candidate running for Attorney General. I love Dana more every day. This story solidifies it even further. Attorney General Dana Nessel said Tuesday that her office plans to sue professional sanctions against Donald Trump's campaign attorneys and allies, including Sidney Powell, for intentional misrepresentations in lawsuits seeking to overturn Michigan election results.
Nice.
So if she pursues charges, these sanctions, and they're through, Sidney Powell cannot operate as an attorney in the state of Michigan ever again.
Good.
And there's some local attorneys that are also under the threat of this as well.
Nice.
Nessel told reporters in a year-end call, quote, unfortunately, any of the worst things that happened is ever said about attorneys about the profession of lawyers now has come to fruition just because of the things that have been said and done by the Trump campaign and his allies. That has been really upsetting to me. I think we need to go back to a time where you can trust an attorney as making an accurate and truthful representation to the court, because if they don't, then they won't be able to practice law anymore. End of quote.
I mean, it's kind of an important tenet to the law as far as the process working, you know?
Well, you know who's not on the list? Rudy Giuliani. Because he never put his name on any of this stuff.
Of course not, because when you're planning on committing fraud, you don't attach yourself to the fraud.
Exactly. The first-term Democrat noted that Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, did not put his name on rejected and withdrawn Michigan lawsuits, which allege unproven voter fraud, and were filed by campaign attorney Mark Thor Hearn. So this guy has a nickname of Thor.
Oh my gosh. That is so crazy. I saw that and I hadn't even gotten a chance to really process it. I
wish Stan Lee was still alive, because Stan would sue the crap out of him.
That's nuts. I saw a creepy van yesterday. It was red and it had Thor painted on the side. And the weirdest, I swear, it was a red like pedo van, and it said Thor in some like hand painted letters. And I was like, that's the scariest van I ever seen. So maybe that was his van.
Maybe it was. So that means Giuliani cannot face criminal charges for lying during a legislative hearing because he was not under oath. But Nessel criticized the work of other attorneys that Giuliani has touted, including Matthew DePerno of Portage, who made questionable claims to right-wing media outlets about Dominion voting systems equipment used in Antrim County, where human error in the Republican clerk's office led to an error in election night reporting results that was later corrected. Yeah, what's happening, Dominion is suing Newsmax, Fox Propaganda Channel, OAN, and saying, you're damaging our reputation. You owe us some money.
Oh, yeah. Nobody's going to want a Dominion voting system after this. I keep questioning. I don't know if they're related to the freight. Are they related to the freight company, Old Dominion?
I don't know.
I'm going to have to look that up later.
I doubt it. Nessel said that the Michigan Attorney General's office will likely file attorney grievance complaints in states where the accused attorneys are licensed to practice law.
Good.
But that can't happen until the lawsuits are officially closed. Nessel said, quote, "We're not at that point yet, but in some cases, absolutely, we will be asking for sanctions and we'll be asking for court costs and attorney's fees. If you have your name to it and you have made intentional misrepresentations of facts to the court, I absolutely believe that you ought to be held accountable." End of quote.
Haha.
I love it.
I know. I can't wait for her commentary when they go to trial. She has the best tweets.
Oh, my gosh. Well, actually, I want to get to an update to a story we've been following down in Florida, and this is the Rebekah Jones case. Rebekah Jones, as we've mentioned on the show, used to be in charge of collecting COVID data for the Florida Department of Health. They fired her because she said that they wanted her to basically cook the books and make it seem more rosy than what it actually was.
And she's also smart and beautiful and sincere, so they could not have her on camera.
Yeah. So I have this story. This is Tim Stello writing for NBC News. The Florida data scientist who says state officials fired her for refusing to change coronavirus numbers sued authorities Monday, alleging that a police raid on her home earlier this month was an illegal act of retaliation. And in my opinion, she's correct. In a 19-page complaint filed in Tallahassee Circuit Court, lawyers for Rebekah Jones argued that officials with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement carried out the December 7th raid to silence her online speech and curry favor with Governor Ron DeSantis, who has criticized Jones and whose office said she was fired in May for repeated insubordination. Yeah, that's what they call it when they ask you to cook the books and you tell them no.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
And that's what they've called it for workers for forever. That's literally what subordination means.
Exactly.
Do what I say or you're fired for not doing what I say.
Mm-hmm. Jones, who helped develop the state's coronavirus dashboard, attributed her ouster to her refusal to manually change data to drum up support for the plan to reopen. Jones has since filed a whistleblower complaint with state officials and developed another coronavirus dashboard that her suit describes as popular with scientists and medical professionals for its, quote, scrupulously accurate and honest data, end of quote. The department executed the December 7th search warrant on Jones's Tallahassee home after she allegedly accessed a Department of Health-run communications platform and sent a November 10th group text warning users that it was time to speak up before another 17,000 people are dead. By the way, they posted the platform's login credentials on the internet.
Yeah, come on.
Anybody could have logged in. They could have spoofed
Right.
her IP address.
Right.
Oh, Jesus. The suit describes agents with their guns drawn aggressively entering her home before one unarmed agent allegedly, quote, ran his hands up and down her ribs and grasped her sides just below her breasts and held her, end of quote, while Jones stood with her arms raised. By the way, they pointed guns at her husband and kids, too.
Yeah, that's what they do, though. That's what cops do. And nobody ever talks about it because people aren't allowed to have rights to their body.
I'm going to skip down a little bit here. After the raid, the suit says, Jones and her family started receiving hate mail and harassing phone calls after state law enforcement officials released a warrant that included her home address and other personal information. NBC was smart and redacted that information when they reported on it. The suit says, quote, she has been placed in such fear for her and her family's safety that she is pulling up roots and moving out of state, end of quote. The suit seeks at least $30,000 in damages and the release of her computer and other devices, including her cell phone, which they illegally took from her, my opinion.
Civil asset forfeiture would stop with them being able to take stuff like that, right? Until after trial.
Well, yeah.
I know that there's some legislation for it right now.
Oh,
it's
yes,
supposed
there
to end
is.
Civil asset forfeiture and bring back the popularity of Justin Amash, but I'm hoping only one of those
Justin
things
Amash
works.
is the one that introduced the bill in Congress. So this would apply to all the states through the 10th Amendment, I believe 10th Amendment.
He's still a Koch brothers lackey. Don't trust that guy.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something I've never been able to understand because I know that there are people who are very, very progressive in a lot of ways, but they support this clown.
It's because
I don't understand it.
It's because they don't follow the money. If you just listen to him talk and you don't look at his votes, it's really easy to agree with everything he says. But when you see that he doesn't vote the way he talks, that's when you go, okay, we've got a problem. And then when you see the money and where it comes from, then it all makes sense.
Yeah. I want to get to this story. This is from The Intercept. This is Chris Gilardi writing on December 21st. Have you heard about this?
I'm not sure.
The city of Detroit is suing Black Lives Matter protesters.
No, I haven't heard about this.
Oh, boy.
Now that the Wayne County sheriff just died of COVID.
Benny Napoleon.
Yep, the one community police officer that they had on the east side of the state. The one, I say, because I don't know that they have any other police that were loved like him.
Yeah.
And now the city wants to sue Black Lives Matter. Why, Darren? Tell me why, please.
Well, at the end of August, activists in Detroit, like those in dozens of U.S. cities, sued their local government for its police department's reaction to this year's Black Lives Matter mobilization. Their complaint alleges that Detroit cops repeatedly responded with violence when they took to the streets and includes photos and descriptions of some of the gruesome resulting injuries, which include bruised and broken ribs, concussions, a collapsed lung, and a fractured pelvis. In light of this brutality, the protesters asked a federal judge to bar the police from using tools of excessive force, including but not limited to chemical weapons, sound cannons, and rubber bullets. Less than a month later, after the court issued temporary orders restricting the cops' use of force, the city filed this official response. It includes a line-by-line denial of every brutality accusation and a countersuit.
And a countersuit. These
Yeah. Detroit's demonstrators are part of a civil conspiracy, the city's countersuit alleges, quote, to disturb the peace, engage in disorderly conduct, incite riots, destroy public property, end of quote, and resist police orders, among other illegal acts.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt you right now before I break something.
Go ahead.
First of all, if there are any attorneys listening right now that might be interested interested in filing a class action lawsuit against the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan, for taking our city assets and our public property and using them to block people from using our public space of downtown for, I don't know, like almost for weeks this summer. For weeks, we couldn't get downtown. Why? Because they were using millions of dollars in our city property to block the roads. Salt trucks, bulldozers, I mean, millions of dollars in equipment. Our money, using it to keep us out of our downtown. And if that's not a class action lawsuit, I don't know what it is. So you give me a call. I got photos. I've got witnesses. I've got statements. I will be your number one person, and we will make it happen.
If any of our friends with the National Lawyer Guild would like to reach out, please do so. But by the way, the National Lawyers Guild is defending the protesters.
Good, because this is insane. And this is so much about a narrative right now. There are police and police forces that are trying to take this narrative and make people look disruptive and violent. And the fact is, the only people being disruptive and violent are the cops.
Yep. The counter-complaint asked the court to issue judgments declaring that the protesters engaged in this conspiracy and defamed the mayor and police and to award the city damages.
Your votes defamed yourself, and your actions, they ruined it worse.
Let me just give you the legal. The legal is the mayor and Detroit City Police are public officials. You signed up for it. You're not entitled to any additional protections. You actually get protections removed because you're a public official.
As you should. That's what you signed up for, to represent people, to be criticized by people, to learn from people, to hear people. Not to sue them.
And I'll cite the court case that pretty much cemented this. Falwell versus Flint. Jerry Falwell and Hustler publisher, the champion, the ultimate champion of the First Amendment, Larry Flint. This lawsuit pisses me right the hell off.
This is the same thing as Donald Trump pardoning the cop that unleashed the dog on the homeless guy. This is to make homeless people. This is to let the public know that they are going to keep assaulting the public. They're going to use their military, their forces, their police, and they're just going to keep unleashing them against us. And we are going to pay for it. And they're saying, deal with it. Deal with it. You don't got a choice.
This is the ultimate, really. If you look up SLAP lawsuits in the dictionary, this would be the textbook example. Strategic lawsuit against public participation, or SLAP suit.
Yeah.
The countersuit against Black Lives Matter protesters is a novel move in the post-George Floyd movement, and it has lit a fire under already boiling local tensions. The city has tried to portray it as a routine legal tactic, but many see the counterattack as an effort to suppress the right to protest and to shift the public narrative away from the police department's violence. Representative Rashida Tlaib, Democrat Michigan, part of the squad, whose congressional district includes much of Detroit, has lambasted the suit as, quote, an unthinkable assault on constitutional rights, end of quote.
Absolutely. How can a city entity sue members of its city, first of all?
Mm-hmm.
Because who pays the damages if you're suing yourself, right?
Yeah.
If we go to sue the city because of something, then it ends up coming out of our tax money. So how come the city isn't the same way?
I think it works the same way.
Can't we just fire the whole city? Can't we be like, mayor, go home, cops, go home, because we're not giving you another $1. Mm-hmm. So if you're working, you're doing it for free. Like, I'm just over all of it. If they're going to sue the people of the city need to rise up and take their offices. Take their offices. Don't even let them walk into work. It's not their building. It's yours.
The protesters are fighting back on two separate tracks. One in court with the backing of national legal groups, and another in the city council, which has the power to cut off funding for the city litigation.
They got to go to the county, too. They've got to go to the county, too. This is something we always forget.
One council member has already vocalized her opposition to the countersuit, and the activists are working to lobby others ahead of a vote early next year. The situation highlights how officials across the country have weaponized the legal system to suppress the Black Lives Matter movement, like with the overuse of felony charges against protesters, something the Detroit activists have also experienced. When activists gathered in a suburb in October to march in defiance of racist policing, Local cops in riot gear attacked them minutes after they took the street and eventually charged 5 with felonies. The prosecutor has not dropped the charges despite pressure from community members, activists, and members of Congress.
They need to sue the county. The Black Lives Matter people of Detroit. They need to come out and they need to counter, like, instead of countering with the city, they just need to sue the county because the county funds the city. Go over their heads.
Yep. The suit was originally filed, the original suit against the police was filed by Detroit Will Breathe, which is the umbrella collective of all these different protesters. The other side, the countersuit, is being led by the Detroit Police Department and their chief, James Craig.
They need to come back at the county. The county's got way more money than the city, and that's where you need to put your attention.
Yeah. Craig has been clear about his strategy in dealing with Detroit Will Breathe. Here's what he told Tucker Carlson on Fox Propaganda Channel recently. Quote, "We don't retreat," end of quote. By the way, Craig has appeared on Tucker's show several times since the protest started. So we know where he is. we
don't retreat. But you don't work for free either, bud.
Yeah.
We're already on to how to get rid of you.
Craig has labeled Detroit Will Breathe a group of criminals and misguided radicals who incite violence. He told another Fox Propaganda Channel host, quote, "I absolutely am not going to allow them to take over our city streets," end of quote. Wait a minute. Whose streets are they?
Our streets.
They belong to the people,
Whose
not
streets?
to you.
Our streets.
Exactly.
Who built them? We did.
With our money. Exactly. He has also lobbed conspiratorial accusations at the Black Lives Matter movement at large, telling Fox and Friends that it is coordinated, planned, and financed by a Marxist ideology trying
You're goddamn
to
right it is.
our government as we know it.
And it's about time. Yeah. That's the best thing that we could have happen to our government as we know it.
As Craig has bragged on Fox Propaganda Channel, he has the support of Detroit's Democratic Mayor Mike Duggan, who has called Craig's protest policing beautiful and outstanding.
Aw, how pretty.
This is why vote blue no matter who sucks.
It sucks.
Oh, this drives. I read this and I got red real fast.
Yeah, this is all very coordinated with the timing. I don't know if you guys saw that Abdul endorsed Dugan.
Yeah.
And it was strategic. He did it in exchange for the not allowing them to do any more water shutoffs. But still, when you see stuff like this, it's just like they're trying to destroy the left.
Exactly. You cannot compromise with these people. You can't.
They're just as bad as Republicans. That's the thing.
Exactly. Violent conservatives. I don't say violent Republicans. I say violent conservatives because there's a hell of a lot of conservatives in the Democratic Party.
Oh, Lord, too many. That's the thing.
Way too many.
Almost everybody now is a conservative, and that's why they get off calling everybody else radical leftists just for being humane.
Yeah. I'm going to skip around a little bit and read this paragraph. In asserting a civil conspiracy, the city's countersuit also alleges that, quote, "The protests in Detroit have repeatedly turned violent, endangering the lives of police and the public," end of quote.
Yeah, because the police are violent.
Exactly.
With rubber bullets and chemical weapons. And they literally are buying exoskeleton bodysuits now. So we're going to have to worry about cops that can pick up a car.
Yep. Oh, by the way, Detroit police have also asserted that some of their officers have been injured by protesters throwing objects at them. However, they don't have any photographic evidence of any of these
all
injuries.
Those videos and not a single one. It's really crazy, that we've managed to capture thousands of them committing violence and not a single one of somebody committing violence against them.
Here's what they're complaining about. Here's the property damage complaint.
Our property, let me guess.
One police car window was shattered on an unspecified date.
That's our car.
A statue of a slave owner was spray painted in September.
Well, why did that still exist? Why was there still a statue of a slave owner? Mm-hmm. Since we're speaking about that, can we talk about Louis Campaw Drive and how we should really get rid of that soon?
By the way, that statue was General Alexander Macomb, as in
Macomb County.
There you go.
Well, yeah, Louis Campaw was the first white guy to bring slaves to the city of Detroit, just so you guys know. So everything in our city named after him is celebrating a slave owner. And they're currently building low-income project apartments at Franklin and Division named after his little brother.
I got to stop this article because I will get angrier. So,
we're already angry.
So
Darren,
the National Lawyers Guild is doing fantastic work. By the way, donate to them if you can.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Well, I got some good news on the flip side of protests here.
Because my blood pressure is...
This is an old article. This is dated October 21st. This is Dan Rebitsky writing for Futurism.com. According to a New York Times article, it says, in order to hold police accountable when they try to hide their identities, a growing number of activists are developing facial recognition tools to identify police. This is great.
So I saw this, but I gotta say, it's got me kind of concerned because I've already seen how the cops are flipping this around. Have you seen it? Like, they're using it against people in court that they were, like, looking for information on the police officers. As if that in itself is illegal or evidence of you attempting to do something. So just be very careful when you hear stuff like that. Again,
you're public officials. If you don't like it, quit.
I absolutely 100% agree. 100%.
This is why I don't run for public office, other than my potty mouth.
Well, even when I did run for public office, I remember considering it. I remember thinking that when I do this, I'm signing up for people to criticize me. Mm-hmm. They're going to know where I live.
Yeah.
They might come and embarrass me publicly. And that was all something I had to decide on before I did it, as do they.
Yeah, absolutely. I got one last story I want to touch on real quick, and this has to do more with the effects of coronavirus, long-lasting effects. This is an article that was published at Wood TV's website. It was originally written by KDVR TV out of Denver. There are patients, and I actually have a friend that's experiencing this, long-lasting smell and taste issues.
Oh, I've heard a lot about that, yeah.
She just posted on Facebook within the last week, her toothpaste tastes like barbecue sauce. Have you ever imagined?
That's nuts.
It's nerve damage.
Well, it's neurological is what I was hearing, yeah.
Yeah, it's nerve damage to the sinuses and the taste buds.
Wow.
And depending on how severe the damage is, yeah, your nerves can grow back, but it takes a long, long time.
And it might not happen.
And it may never happen. There's people that are talking about if they cook hamburger, that it smells like rotting flesh. I mean,
that is
technically it is. I mean, I like a good cheeseburger.
Every vegan will tell you that's exactly what it smells like.
But yeah, I mean, I love a good cheeseburger. Oh my God, if something like that happened, I would pray and hope that they find a cure for this.
It'd be pretty darn horrible.
Yes, it would. Well, that's going to wrap things up. This is officially the final show of 2020. We'll be back in 2021, so that means we'll be back next week at the same time. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katy Steele for Jack Prince.
For our announcer, Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.